Despite the general incompetency and greed that characterizes most politicians, we should be grateful for the certain few individuals who have managed to keep us from total annihilation and otherwise destroying each other in the world we live in. This being said, I've been quite apprehensive as of late, as it seems more and more our leadership is straying away from those premises that once made America by far the greatest nation on earth. While it remains a financial powerhouse comparable to the rest of the world, the USA's wealth is now largely the product of the combination of accumulated stores and other, gatherings of goods from past eras, and borrowing, this last mostly due to debts accrued by the incessant wars that ring harmonic to the sensibilities of the big bankers, contractors, and businessmen to whose ears the sound of exploding bombs, fired shells, and crumbling infrastructure are sweet, sweet music. There are more than several problems with being the police of the world, and with having war as your modus operandi, and no amount of reasoning and logic yet, apparently, has satisfactorily convinced the political decision makers of the corresponding and consequent waste of soldiers, money, and resources such a policing accumulates. It would be best to draw on the analogy provided by the history and decline of the Roman Empire. One of the greatest civilizations ever, and very much like our present state, when it was at its peak, Rome was the benchmark for all societies. It was great in every sense, and its people, even those it conquered, were the freest in the world, with all the luxuries the globe could provide. Political freedom, speech freedom, even sexual freedom and gender equality were at all-time highs. Life in the heyday of Rome was good. But shortly after the greatest height of this empire, something happened. Rome became decadent to the point of straying from its founding principles. Even in times primed for peace, the wars kept going, had to keep going, as the unchecked spending by the government, not just for the bread or the circuses, had drained the coffers. The empire, just like us today, needed to war. A Caesar, probably Juvenal, taught every politician about how well bread and circuses serve to calm the populace. Give them entertainment and fill their bellies, and the citizens will offer you no trouble. The problem was, in so doing, Rome became weak. It came to the point where it needed to war to sustain its economy, but few Romans wanted to fight anymore. Accustomed to the cushy life, most men wanted their bread and their circuses, and that's it. Having to bring back victories and some booty from this warring, though, required men. So what the leaders of Rome did was hire foreigners and mercenaries to fight for them, assuming wrongly that entrusting their livelihood and their nation to such hired guns would still yield a profit. Not surprisingly, the citizens of Rome, in their reliance on these mercenaries, and financially dependent on a military-industrial complex not unlike our own, soon fell like dominoes to invaders, to disease, and to moral and economic ruin. The fall of the Roman Empire should be a lesson to us today, but apparently few can see the similarities, maybe blinded by the fact that American soil has been basically bomb-free since Pearl Harbor, its mainland seeing no foreign bullets since the Civil War. Here in America today, nobody starves, and entertainment or circuses have become themselves the most successful industry. Life in America, as once it was in Rome, is also good. Lest this be only a history lesson, the purpose of this post to posterity is to say that an American in this year 2020, I think I'm being led by buffoons. Somehow, perhaps by allowing everyone equal vote, and regardless of intelligence and experience, or just as likely by lobby and banker cash, America has evolved into a corrupt entity, at odds with even its own founding documents. On top of that, It is now becoming dependent on foreign goods in order to eat. Around 20% of our food is already being imported, and it's relying on private mercenaries in order to fight, largely because America, like Rome, continues to need to war in order to maintain its economy. When war is not available, such as in this current time, they find other ways for the banks to generate more money by causing internal strife, mob riots, destruction, and so on and so forth. The idea of guaranteed freedoms, quote unquote, in fact, is no longer an overriding manifesto anymore, as even basic constitutional liberties, those things which define our nation, have had to be defended due to developments like the Patriot Act, the Department of Homeland Security, internal surveillance of social media, the attempt to get rid of all the founding fathers of this country, and so on. Citizens today allow themselves to be even paid to spy on other citizens. This while their basic rights and freedom are being challenged, really seriously challenged, due to ethereal and catch-all excuses like threats of terrorism or hate speech or things being censored for being insensitive and offensive. In England, you can't even mention the race of someone without the threat of being thrown into jail. This is the same in many other European countries, and while they're trying to make it that way in America, it's not quite there yet. For Iraq, El Salvador, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, these being the most recent open invasions, all these military actions by America began using executive orders and congressional resolution passed just for that purpose, and all without any formal war declarations. The same may become true soon for Iran, or perhaps China, because ever since Nixon used this privilege of executive order during Watergate, presidents have used the executive order, or rather abused executive privilege, to invoke everything from new White House furniture to especially armed attacks, restrictions on liberty, and so on. Under special acts of Congress, acts, ACTS, such as the Authorization for Use of Military Force Against Iraq Resolution of 2002, the Equal Rights Protection Act, and so on, the military can more or less act independently of the people's wishes, under the guise, for example, of fighting terrorism, and they can keep what they do secret under the catch-all national security. Under such a leadership, we might as well have an emperor, as did ancient Rome, which at least had a senate which actually provided some sort of check and balance and a bit of security for the people. So, as I say, I am a bit apprehensive because I fear that without meaningful change, America will soon go the way of old Rome. The decadence today is not so insurmountable in itself, but the debt and the lack of logical and moral direction on top of it all provide a major obstacle to any improvement. People are seriously challenging logic as being a white slaveholder's way of deciding an argument. But if you get rid of logic and you get rid of common sense, what is there left besides your ridiculous emotions and feelings, which can vary as much as the weather, not only from season to season, but from day to day and in every individual? Really, who cares about your feelings, really? Instead of just letting the dinosaur die, my first inclination in cases such as this, an infusion of new rational leadership might be able to change the trajectory this country, if not man in general, is traveling. It begins with a weaning off of the bank dependency. You simply cannot continue to spend money you do not have, as is 1/4 or so of the income taxes collected by the Internal Revenue Service. Your tax money is spent on military. Just under half of it goes to Social Security, welfare, and health care. Interest on the debt, but really never touching the debt itself, comes to about 10%. Add in 12%, quote, safety net programs, unquote, and that leaves approximately 8% of all monies collected that have to go to not only government operations and employees, but also their maintenance and every other single thing, which I find hard to believe. I know how ambassadors live, and I know how these big cities run by Democrats suck up all the money that the country has. One wonders how this small percentage of money left over, mathematically, can manage to pay for it all. Throw in the fact that nearly half of all adult Americans are receiving some sort of government subsidy, check, or dole, and it is no wonder we need to borrow money to survive. But really, how can it be that a country, an inanimate and conceptual entity, the Leviathan, is able to borrow money? A nation cannot sign a lien itself. It cannot compare interest rates or negotiate a deal. At best, someone can claim to speak for the nation and sign for the nation, and therefore should be responsible for that nation, whoever it is that signs it. This, however, is not the case. Is there not some general schematic problem if the same government insuring your funds in your bank, the FDIC, borrows money to keep itself alive? Manifestly, somehow in America, there exists money that does not belong to Americans that indeed Americans must pay to get. If America borrows money to maintain itself, one would think the greater power is the one that provides the money. It should be running the show, and whether you want to believe it or not, it does. But it's not just the banks anymore. It's the banks in combination with the trillionaires, the mega billionaires, the people that own casinos, the people that do arms deals, the 6 corporate owners who own almost all the media. These are the people who really are running this country. All this being the case today, and argue with me if you want, but you're going to lose. I want to offer, at least for your discussion, a new political platform for what shall be called simply the new party. Yes, it has been done before, never with much success. The red and blue teams, those Brodignagian political cartels that rake in millions annually and dominate all American politics, are really just two sides of the same coin. They are offered to you by the billionaires, big bankers, gangsters, casino owners, military contractors, and other big business people who really run the show so that you think you have a choice. In reality, whichever side you pick, Republican or Democrat, the real power wins. And, in fact, I would make the gamble that at least the last 5 presidents of the United States were not elected, but they were instilled. They were placed in that position. Now, this real power we're talking about, this non-elected, it's not the Illuminati or lizard men or those who have special pacts with the demons or extraterrestrial influencers or a solely Jewish cabal or the Freemasons, as all these many conspiracy theorists claim. While there may be some truth to all of those things, you don't need to go there. The real power is these richest men in the world. Big business owners like military contractors. These are people who only need a 1-point interest to make millions and can take over any commodity overnight. Who they are exactly is not easy to pin down at any one time, as the exact culprits change from generation to generation and sometimes year by year. What we do know for certain is that many of them donate, for example, to both main political parties, and often lavishly, so that when the time comes, whichever party wins, it has been sufficiently greased. Speaking of grease, big oil, pharmaceuticals, Hollywood, Lockheed, Honeywell, Rockwell International, The biggest construction companies, again, defense and general contractors like Halliburton, Cheney, and Tishman, the men who make billions a year, who run the largest casinos in the world, many of them are these big donors. Blackwater and its clones, the modern-day mercenaries, are big contributors as well. This also, you understand the first point of this manifesto. Number 1. All bankers and the Federal Reserve shall immediately forgive America all of its debts, and the balance must now be reduced to zero. Any banks or lending institutions failing to do this shall no longer be permitted to do any work in this country. They will be driven out by force if so required, in which case, along with divorcing ourselves from the banks, we will, if necessary, even break with any standard, gold standard or whatever. If we need to isolate national and become independent, some type of isolated nationalism is required to do this, we'll do it. In effect, they screwed us up. We have no money, so we declare bankruptcy. Number 2, there shall be immediate removal of American military troops from everywhere else in the world. These troops will be repositioned and recoordinated so as to best protect the country from within. The logistics alone will save the nation billions, while in fact strengthening our defensive position. America will be safer, and the military troops in full reserve will be used only with caution and only when needed, no longer to be wasted on fighting ideological battles or for economic concerns. Unlike Rome, which invaded countries and then brought back trains and trains of gold and gems and spices and other valuables for the people. After our wars, we only bring back bills and sick soldiers and more things that we have to pay for, with nothing really ever changing for the better, by the way. Number 3, America will no longer invade any country unless it first obtains at least 60% approval of the people. Whether this be through direct vote or through Congress makes no difference. But no longer simple 50%, it's got to be 60. Number 4, all political parties, that's all, shall be disbanded and marked as cartels. Everyone from now on with political ambitions must run as an independent. This will serve to balance out the alternatives and give everyone a fair chance, not based solely on money. To this end, there will be provided a special government TV and radio channel whereon any prospective qualifying politician might get his or her exposure free of cost. Everyone shall be given equal slots of time, and no debate shall be exclusive. Number 5, there will need to be a limit, a strict limit, and people aren't going to like this, but I will defend it, and I anywhere at any time, and it absolutely must be done. There will need to be a limit to the amount of wealth a person can have. This is really the only way to curtail the incessant greed that has infested this government. You know, it's not like it's got a bad wing to this building of government that we can just knock down and rebuild again. This thing is so infested with vermin and corruption that no amount of tenting or attempting to clean it is ever going to get rid of it completely. You have to, in a way, break it down and build it again from scratch, from the bottom up, using our same principles, but as is, the corruption just it can't be amputated. Anyway, in today's funds, this wealth cap, I suggest, this is negotiable, could be something like $5 million per person, meaning your family of 4 might have $20 million in assets. However it works out, and whatever number you come up to, as some allowances also must be made for big projects and investments, that contribute to the infrastructure. Say you wanted a new stadium or a new road in your town, a limit to net worth must be established. If you are the less than 1% worth more than $5 million per person and you don't like this, then you can leave this country with half of your assets and go somewhere else. Number 6, ambassadors and similar shall only be sent to selective countries for certain situations because they cost money and sometimes friendships. They should be reciprocal. In short, we will only go where we are wanted, and you can only come here if we want you. Number 7, price controls shall be levied on all necessities. This means electricity, gasoline, internet, telephone, television, and similar. Number 8, all health care shall be made free for all citizens. It will be paid for by the monies that were going to military excursions, and by taxes everyone will pay equally. Since prices will be controlled severely, expenses will be much less. Not only that, but healthcare professionals will be able to repay their schooling costs by a term in public service. I'm thinking you could have in each town some sort of clinic, free clinic. Number 9, insurance will no longer be necessary for medical treatment because health and education will be the 2 main things government provides its citizens. What good is the government at all otherwise? To protect you, to keep you healthy, and to educate you. Number 10, special government pensions. For example, for being a retired service person, or ex-congressman, or ex-president. Any job that was paid for by the government will be revoked. These special pensions cost the taxpayer a lot, and they're not needed because of the regular pension system, which we suggest will occur. You could start to collect at 65 years old at minimum. 63 is now too young. Now, for older people unable to do physical work, they can be given things like jobs teaching youth, where experience can be the biggest teacher of the children. Number 11, we will not stick our nose where it doesn't belong. If it does not concern us, it is not our business. If Syrians or Libyans want to fight among themselves, or if Jews and Palestinians or Hutsi and Tutsi want to beat each other up, or if somebody wants to call us names, just have at it. Unlike past administrations, we will not assume our nation superior to yours or interfere in your affairs, but if you mess with us, there will still be trouble. Number 12, we shall close our borders completely, at least for a decade. No immigration at all. This is to get ourselves straight and paid for, to maintain the infrastructure, get a good count of actually how many people we have, and then prepare for new citizens who could be selectively admitted after that time, costs permitting. The millions and millions of illegal aliens will be immediately deported. We must stop confusing political asylum with escaping poverty. Mexicans that come to this country and work under the table for someone with a lot of money, in theory, are no different than the slaves back in the slaves' days. Think about it for a minute. Number 13, freedoms shall extend to the workplace. Somehow, some geniuses thought it a good idea to say your job can restrict your natural rights, in effect rendering you while working as no better than a slave. This cannot continue. It must be made clear that liberties always abide. These are nothing new we're asking for, just the already existing constitutional freedoms and liberties. This means, essentially, so long as you hurt nothing, harm no one by or thereby violating someone else's liberties, you can still indeed say or do or ingest or grow whatever you please, and your employer cannot fire you for what you say alone. The Patriot Act, the Hate Speech Act, similar enactments not directly voted on by the people shall all be immediately repealed as unconstitutional. Number 14. We shall slowly wean ourselves off of our foreign dependencies. This means Chinese, Taiwanese, etc. goods, Mexican and South American, etc. foods and fruits and vegetables and so on, Mexican beef and all this. We shall develop these industries again on our own lands, and the fixed money situation will allow people to survive on the salaries earned in these industries. If the other countries can do it, we can do it. We do not advocate a trade bloc or embargoes or an isolationism in regard to product exchanges. Trade will continue, but the deficit must be fixed, meaning we must at least sell to another country as much as we buy from it. If you are an American business person and you build your factory in another country, say Thailand, you better be selling most of your sneakers to the Siamese. Number 15. All those able to work will work. We will find something for nearly everyone to do. The homeless shall be taken off all the streets in Detroit, in Chicago, in New York, in Los Angeles, in Portland, and all these disgusting looking cities where people are living in tents on the street that people with their other people with their families have to walk over in order to even go to visit a business on that street, where they use public bathrooms at best. At worst, they just do their business in alleyways and in people's door jams. All those people will be removed from the streets and be given an option. You either get on the buses we will provide, which will take you to a farm where you will work, be given a bunk and 3 meals a day, and a small wage where you can have the opportunity to leave this camp at some time. Or if you choose not to work and to not get on the bus, we will put you in prison. Number 16. As an experiment, we shall move into the direction where there shall be executions, mental institutions, and retribution camps, but there shall be no more prisons. Crime in society must become a thing of the past. Number 17, and that'll be it for now. The stock markets will all be closed, all of them. This whole system is no good. If you want to buy stock in a business, become a legal partner. There's plenty of ways you can do this by buying a legal share. The stock markets have extended their usefulness and now too much affect and compromise the actual markets. What's happening is now the people that do the most physical work, who, if you think about it, should get paid the most money, are getting paid the least, while these little weasels, who all they do is wave papers around all day long, earn 6, 7, 8-figure incomes like it's nothing. Anyway, and so on and so on. It's not complete or perfect, but this is a start and something to discuss. Just don't tell me the situation can't be fixed. The sad fact is, Too many people making too much money, or who have too much to lose, or who too much love the limelight, just don't want it to be fixed. Too often it's been said to me, do you really want the job, the responsibility of running the country? In the past, I thought they might have a point. Who am I, who are we to think we would not also become corrupted once put in such positions of power? But, given what and who is currently allowed to run the show, I can say confidently, even you or I or perhaps someone you know could do a better job. We need more unimpeachable types again. The ones who have hidden away, some not even bothering to vote, who have unwittingly left their fortunes and their futures in the hands of self-serving, political, as well as scientific